Гостен во вестите на телевизија 24 е поранешниот евроамбасадор во земјата Ерван Фуере. Ambassador Fouere, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
The latest messages from European Union, from Brussels, actually from the leadership, from the President of European Council, Antonio Costa, were clear, crystal clear. I can quote, he said, Macedonian authorities know what they had to do and what they need to do. Does these messages from Brussels shatter all hopes that we will remain stuck on the path towards European Union?
Well, I think we should recall, first of all, the background to this problem, to this mess, if I could put it crudely. First of all, the fault lies with Bulgaria for abusing its veto authority and also using this bilateral issue with its neighbour for purely domestic political purposes. Secondly, the fault also lies with the European Union for imposing this condition before accession negotiations could start. And this has shown that the EU has not yet managed to put forward a strategy to deal with bilateral disputes independently from the negotiation process. And this is, again, a failure of the European Union. And thirdly, clearly, the strategy of the current Macedonian government has failed because we have lost another year in the whole process, and the country is stuck. So for me, the only solution lies in the constitutional amendments being adopted, and this will create of itself a momentum which will help a lot in opening up many doors for the country, for North Macedonia, in the accession negotiations. I think this is inevitable, and I think it's wishful thinking for the government to think that it can alter conclusions from 2 or 3 years ago of the European Council.
Do you think that our government should adopt constitutional changes without guarantees, and what we should expect next?
My feeling is that once the constitutional changes are adopted, the negotiation will start, and this in itself will create a momentum which will open many doors, business opportunities, a greater investment confidence, and also will enable the country to perhaps catch up with Albania and be able to reach the same level that Albania has reached in its accession negotiations, because a lot of work has already been done in the country for the reforms. The Macedonian government has been slow in a number of areas, but still the reform process is ongoing. So this momentum, I think, will, as I say, open many doors, but also it will preempt, in my view, any attempt by Bulgaria to try to impose new barriers. We mustn't forget that the standing and reputation of Bulgaria in the European Union is rock bottom. They are almost at the lowest of the score in the Transparency International scoreboard on corruption. They are almost at the bottom also of the EU's rule of law scoreboard. So their reputation is extremely damaged. And I think the rest of the European Union would certainly not countenance any further barriers to be imposed by Bulgaria, particularly at a moment when the internal Bulgarian situation is so volatile and so weak, much weaker than at the beginning when Bulgaria imposed and abused its veto power to set up this condition before the accession negotiations could start.
Prime Minister Mickoski, in his latest statements, reduced the guarantees to two pillars, Strasbourg judgments and the conclusions from 2022. At this moment, this looks like mission impossible. Is there even a slightest chance or hope, maybe, that the members will agree to change the conclusions of 2022?
I have not seen any precedent where conclusions from previous councils are changed. And I don't think this should be the focus of the Macedonian government in its negotiation, because what will that serve? It won't serve anything. What the Macedonian government need to do, once it has adopted the constitutional change, is to demonstrate clearly its commitment to the EU accession. It should try and promote a consensus building amongst all the political parties in the country, because at the moment they are spending so much time insulting each other rather than working together in a consensus mode to achieve the priority goal of the country, which is accession to the European Union. And this will enable the Macedonian government to demonstrate its positive approach to the whole negotiating process. And I think there will be reciprocity on the part of the EU member countries. The country has many friends among the European Union. And I think by this gesture of adopting the constitutional amendment, that friendship will bring dividends in the succeeding process. And I think there will be much greater pressure also on the Bulgarian government to adopt the many judgments of the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Although, of course, now, as we see with the extremely volatile political situation in Bulgaria, nothing seems to work. So that might take time. But nevertheless, the pressure will be there for Bulgaria to deliver on its own commitments and to demonstrate that it merits being a member of the European Union. At the moment, it doesn't.
Where the Macedonian authorities go wrong? Are they passive? How do you see the situation?
I don't think so, but I think they are deluding themselves in thinking that they can persuade the rest of the European Union to go backwards, to change the conclusions of a European Council, to suspend this the French proposal, which in my view was the worst possible precedent in dealing with bilateral disputes ever, and has caused great damage to the European Union's reputation and also to the credibility of the accession process. But now we are in a new situation. We are moving forward. There are, of course, a particular focus on the situation in Ukraine and Moldova, but the commitment towards the Western Balkans remains. And we mustn't forget that the longer the delay in the negotiations with North Macedonia, the greater danger that the country will be open to malign influences from Russia, from even neighbors, and even the US, who sometimes don't seem to understand the sensitivities. So I think that the Macedonian government should realize that its friends are in the European Union, and its objective should be pushing towards accession as quickly as possible. And as I say, catching up with Albania. This is quite possible once the constitutional amendments are adopted, and you have this momentum which will be created, which will bring dividends down the road.
3 years ago, we had an interview together. It was during the negotiations of French proposal. And back then you said that the negotiation framework is a prison for Macedonia and Bulgaria holds the key. But also you mentioned one thing. You said, I quote, Macedonian government should request a document incorporated into the first intergovernmental conference with European Union, where it will be clear that the Article 12 of the agreement with Bulgaria will not be abused during the negotiation. Is this maybe the guarantee that we should be seeking from European Union, and can this be even succeed?
I doubt very much if this guarantee will be given prior to the acceptance of the constitutional amendment, because you see how entrenched the various positions are, particularly in the case of Bulgaria. So, as I say, again, once the government puts forward the amendments for the constitution and they are adopted, this will create this positive momentum which will be sufficient guarantee, in my view, that Bulgaria will think twice before trying to abuse its position, as it did 3 years ago with the so-called French proposal, which, as I say, was a big mistake on the part of the European Union.
Ambassador, if we put aside the dispute with Bulgaria, even though Bulgaria is saying that this is not a dispute, that this is a European thing regarding the negotiation framework, how do you evaluate the latest messages from official Athens requesting the use of the constitutional name from Prime Minister Mickoski?
Yes, well, you know, these things will always come up, no matter what Macedonia tries to achieve and do. It's inevitable, and I don't think one should pay too much attention to it. The implementation of agreements, of course, is critically important, of bilateral agreements once they have been reached. But at the same time, we must consider the broader context. And the European Union offers this context of positivity in all these bilateral issues. And I think, in my view, as the Macedonian government pursues its objective, as it approaches the final goal of EU accession, there will be, of course, bilateral disputes, but they will be dealt with in a broader context. Look at what happened between Ireland and Britain. This is what we achieved. We were bitter enemies prior to accession, but once we were sitting around the same table, we were friends and were able to discuss these bilateral problems, bilateral issues over history, etc., in a very rational way, and many of them were solved. And there are still, of course, problems, but we are discussing them. We are not imposing vetoes or anything like that. And I think this is the important element to be borne in mind in this particular case.
Yes, thank you for your time.